Other bid from the Stamford Bridge club. Charlton rejected a second bid of £7.5 million for the England midfielder last week. Well, Parker was dropped from the Charlton squad following the initial approach. Manager Alan Curbishley claimed he wasn't in the right frame of mind. Well, Charlton released this statement on their website today. As it's become abundantly clear that Scott Parker wishes to leave Charlton wishes to leave Charlton, and following a further bid from Chelsea, Charlton now confirm that they're in negotiations with Chelsea with a view to completing the transfer of the England international midfielder. Well, one of Scott Parker's former teammates, John Robinson, joins us on the line now. John, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. How saddened are you that Charlton losing one of their best players?
Yeah, obviously it's not good. Obviously it's because they've made such strides as well this year, and they're sitting fourth and quite comfortable in there at the moment, and looking like they could easily qualify for that position. So to lose one of your best players at this stage of the season is not good. But once again, one of the big clubs come calling, it's very hard to possibly turn that money down, and especially if the player decides in his heart that maybe it's time to move on.
But John, Charlton are in fourth, playing their hearts out, going really well, and even so, the club above them has picked their best player. Seems something wrong in that.
Well, they've obviously looked at Charlton and looked at Scotty's age and how he's progressed and everything, and think he's one for the future as well as present. And as I say, I'm afraid when one of the big people come calling, it's hard for them to turn down. Is
it a good move for Scott Parker then, would you say?
Only time will tell. I mean, I think he's progressed so much under Charlton. I think he'll only get better with the management that's there and the players there. I think he will get better. But obviously, when you look at the squad of Chelsea, there's no disrespect to Charlton. The players there, he will only learn off, and which make him a better player. But whether he'll be playing every week, that's another question. And I think Scotty needs to be playing every week to keep his drive going and all that. So, but no, as I say, only time will tell, really.
Well, there has been a suggestion that he'll sit on the bench and watch Frank Lampard play.
Well, I mean, I think he's possibly in a different position than Frank. I mean, no, they play in the middle, but Frank obviously likes to get forward in that, and Scotty likes to sit back and dig in and keep it simple and keep things flowing. So, but no, as I say, you've got a lot of quality in there, and it'll be very hard. And I think that's where the dilemma comes into it, is whether he'll be playing every week. And but as I say, when one of the top three come in, as a player, it's very hard to get that mentally out of your head. If you ever turn it down, you'll always wonder ifs, a lot of ifs and buts. But no, obviously Scotty made the decision that it possibly was looking like time he wanted to move on. And as I say, they've obviously come up with the right kind of money, otherwise Charlton wouldn't have taken it.
Alan Curbishley made a stance. He tried to hang on to his star player. Do you feel that he's been undermined?
Undermined by who? The player or the board?
Well, no, people at Charlton who've made the decision that they can now speak to Chelsea about him.
Well, then obviously that must have been the board. But nothing goes past anything that won't happen at Charlton without Alan Curbishley say so. Because, as I say, and if he didn't want to, and if he didn't think that the player was in the frame of mind that he could keep him into for the rest of the season, then that may not be good for the squad and the atmosphere around there. So he would then have to come to the decision on that. But no, he wouldn't have been undermined by it, I shouldn't have thought. No.
Okay, John Robinson, great to speak to you. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
Well, let's get some more reaction now on the news that Scott Parker, Charlton are in negotiation with Chelsea over Scott Parker. Let's talk to the former Chelsea captain, Ron Harris. He joins us on the line now. Ron, thanks very much for speaking to us.
It's a pleasure.
Another high-profile person on the way to Chelsea, it looks like. What's your reaction?
Well, obviously, I think that it's a good signing from Chelsea. Another young English player, and I think the lad is one of the best midfield players in the Premiership on current form.
Now, where do you see him fitting in at Chelsea? Because obviously they've got a host of stars, and their midfield's pretty well stocked, isn't it?
Well, obviously, when you look at the players they've got in midfield, it's frightening to see the ones that are not playing. But obviously, football nowadays is revolved around rotation. So obviously, the fella Scott Parker was playing regular at Charlton. Will he get the same sort of opportunities at Chelsea? You know, it remains to be seen. But obviously, I can't see him playing week in and week out because they've got too many. You know, you've got to start to question what's going to happen to the likes of Makalele and Joe Cole and Jeremy.
Now, he's going from being one of Charlton's biggest star to a team where there is an enormous host of stars. How do you see him fitting in there if he goes?
Well, obviously, without being disrespectful to the players at Charlton, he's got to be playing with better players at Chelsea, so it can only forward his career. And as I say, you've only got to look at somebody like Frank Lampard that's, over the last 18 months has had an unbelievable spell of form, and I think the same thing will happen with Scott Parker.
Do you think this gives Ranieri a selection headache, another great player to choose from?
Well, obviously, it must be a nice headache, but at the moment, it's going to be interesting who's going to sit in the stand and who's playing.
Ron Harris, thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers. Bye.
Ron Harris speaking there. Chelsea's trip to Blackburn is live this Sunday on Premiership Plus. That's on channel 433. Sky Digital coverage gets underway at 1:30. For more information on that, you can ring 0870 5 160 160.
Talks with Chelsea over the sale of Scott Parker after another bid from the Stamford Bridge club. Charlton rejected a second bid of £7.5 million for the England midfielder last week.
Charlton Chief Executive Peter Varney was staying tight-lipped over Scott Parker's future when he arrived for today's Premier League meeting. But on the club's website, a statement confirms the club are talking to Chelsea. As it has become abundantly clear that Scott Parker wishes to leave Charlton, and following a further bid from Chelsea, Charlton now confirm that they are in negotiations with Chelsea with a view to completing the transfer of the England international midfielder. Earlier this month, Charlton rejected Chelsea's approaches for the England player.
We're not interested, and that's the end of it as far as we're concerned, and we live to fight another day.
But surely if Chelsea come back and bid silly money, 15
What's
million...
silly money then?
Well, something like 15 million, say.
That is silly money, because that ain't enough. What I'm saying is that we, as a football club, we are in a position where we can't stop people bidding for our players. That's life. And Chelsea have made a bid, but there's no reason why we've got to take it.
Last week, Chelsea upped their bid to £7.5 million, and Parker hasn't played for Charlton since the initial approach, with the player training away from the rest of the first-team squad.
To lose one of your best players at this stage of the season is not good, but once again, one of the big clubs come calling, it's very hard to possibly turn that money down, and especially if the player decides in his heart that maybe it's time to move on.
The deal is expected to go through today, Chelsea's first signing during the January transfer window.
I thought there was the player they didn't want in midfield, because Makelele and Frank Lampard must be two of the best players in the Premiership at the moment. But there you are, he's an exceptional talent, there's no doubt about it. He's only 22 years of age, so, it's a great signing for us, but, it just causes more problems for Mr. Ranieri, I'm afraid.
As in the case of Fulham and Louis Saha, Charlton appear to have come to the conclusion that it's best to cash in rather than keep an unhappy and unsettled player. Richard Kaufman, Sky Sports.
So Parker probably on his way to Chelsea, and the Chelsea captain John Terry.
If people choose to try and bust the bank to get success, and we don't think that is the way you'll get success, you need to build and build slowly and steadily as we have done at Charlton, then we shouldn't be penalised for that. And if we've got no sympathy really, if clubs get themselves into that situation, they must suffer the consequences of that.
Two schools of thought on the subject, and one is that a club should be penalised if it has been mismanaged and gets into trouble and goes into administration, and the other is by docking 9 points it helps the slide further and wouldn't encourage any investors to come in.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will return. Move to Chelsea. Charlton manager Alan Kirbishley is less than pleased.
The last 3 weeks have left a bad taste in my mouth, and the way this transfer has been conducted, we're not happy with, but that's life, and everybody's got to get on with that. But the bottom line is he doesn't want to play for us, and he's totally not focused on what we need to do. So he's not been included in anything we've done over the last couple of weeks, and that's the way it is. If it does get concluded, I'd like to thank Scott for what he done for us. I've known him a long time, and whenever he put a Charlton shirt on, he gave us 200%, and also out on the training ground he did. But once it was obvious he wasn't going to do, he wasn't going to give that total commitment to us, I don't think Scott is the same player. So that's life, and we move on.
It's pretty subdued, Alan Kirbishley. Well, he's subdued because he's losing this guy, 23-year-old Scott Parker, who joined Charlton just 8 years old as a trainee. Famed for his ball juggling in a TV advert, but he signed a 5-year deal in July 2003. That after being linked with a move to Chelsea at the end of last season. Signed a new 5-year deal. Current supporters, Player of the Year as well. This is how he compares against Chelsea midfielders. As you can see, this is Joe Cole. He scored more goals and, well, 4 times more tackles than Joe Cole as well, but he's been on the pitch for twice as long. Well, will Parker make his debut this weekend? Chelsea's trip to Black...